Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 124 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I'm sure you're all getting some rest and relaxation after the wild week of completing the pre-public charge adjustment filings. And sure, no, I was packed. It was a hectic time, and everything had to be put on hold. And as luck would have it, I had a bunch of USCIS interviews every morning too. So it was like mornings at USCIS, evenings trying to send letters to USCIS, and we'll see how difficult they're going to be about the postmark date situation, the courier situation. I know there's probably going to be some lawsuits about that. But I thought I'd do a quick episode that's coming up right here, which is the interview I did a few weeks ago actually with one of the founders of TRAC. TRAC is that program that gets a lot of statistics primarily, or a lot of statistics about immigration, events, and shares out there. But it had some really interesting charts that popped up, and I thought I got to get to know these people and see what they do. So I did an interview with her, Susan Long. It was an interesting interview. Also, before starting, I want to let I have the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox. It's a centralized location where I share a lot of the information I collect as a practicing immigration attorney. And it's a premium program. A lot of it is behind a paywall. But I thought, I do a daily tip. Every day I shoot a video, and I post that video and to people that are members of the group. But I thought, the video itself is educational, so I want to make that available to all fellow immigration attorneys. So if you're in the federal or the private immigration bar, send me an email at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com, and I could add you to the daily email list for that video that goes into something I learned that day about immigration law. There's so much nuance in immigration law that I literally could do this every day forever and it still won't run out. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of unfortunate. It shouldn't be that complicated, but it is. So just send that. Now, I do accumulate these videos, and I have a library of videos that's adding up to be hundreds and hundreds, eventually thousands, that you could access. That's the premium service. If you want more information about that, include that in the email as well, that you request more info. And primarily, the value in that one is just a lot of CLE type analysis. And if you're in California or states that reciprocate CLE California, the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox is an accredited California bar CLE provider. So you get some self-study CLE credits that way as well. And then I do analysis on L1 cases, EB1C cases. And the primary thing I think is really helpful that you're going to make 1,000 times more money on what you pay is the breakdown of what I'm doing with marketing and advertising and sales and all this kind of stuff with my law firm during this period. And I update that regularly. And I just, there's so many leads and so many potential clients that I get every day that it's overwhelming. So I share that information to the premium members. Just send me an email, info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com, and you get information about that and also join the free daily tip. I guess with that, let's get it all started. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. For years now, I've been hearing the word TRAC, T-R-A-C, in news and getting just tremendous statistics and really eye-opening stuff. And there was a recent TRAC statistic that came out about asylum cases and people going to court for asylum. And it was like shocking. I think they said like 99% of people appear when they have. Well, you have to. I'll put the chart on the show notes, but it's amazing. Plus other charts. I think it was another one about approval rates for judges across different cities in the country. And so I thought, why not reach out and try to see who they are, what they are, what's going on. I know the name, but look behind the people in the organization. And I was able to connect with Susan Long. She's a wonderful person. I wanted to introduce everybody to get to know her. So Susan, could you give us some information about, where you grew up and your background and how you got involved with TRAC?
Well, let's see. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I was born in Tacoma, Washington, and I got my doctorate from the University of Washington. And then took a job as a professor at Syracuse University here back in New York. And have from a long time been an active user of the Freedom of Information Act, and indeed got the data for my dissertation from the Internal Revenue Service after not just filing requests, but actually filing lawsuits and being successful there. So we got the idea. I helped David Burnham, who was then an investigative reporter for the New York Times, and had won many awards. And also was a believer in the value of data to tell you what the federal government or any government was doing. And we teamed up with the idea of forming TRAC back in 1989. And the purpose was to try to get data out of the federal government using the Freedom of Information Act that documented what federal agencies were doing day to day, and then sort of analyzing it and trying to make it understandable and making it available to the public so that everyone would have the information they needed to really be able to participate in public discussion about, well, what should our policies be here in our democratic system.
Interesting. And what was your PhD and what did you study when you got your graduate degree?
Pardon?
What degree do you have when you got your graduate degree from the University of Washington?
Okay, my doctorate is in sociology with a dual major in criminal justice, it was called, and in quantitative methods, statistics. And then I did a postdoc at Princeton University in statistics.
Wow, that's a lot to do. You're a tough cookie.
And you know, my faculty position, I'm a professor here at Syracuse University, and my field is managerial statistics, you know, using statistics to understand organizations and, you know, the management of organizations, which include, obviously, government organizations.
Yeah. So in 1989, you said you started TRAC. What does TRAC stand for?
Right. TRAC stands for, it's a mouthful, Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse. And transactional is the idea of, we really wanted to track the transactions, the actual events, the actual day-to-day, what the federal government does day-to-day at that level. So we were obviously familiar with the Freedom of Information Act that provides that the public is entitled to get access to what the government is doing. And secondly, taking advantage of technology and changes in technology, which meant that the federal government was moving from paper records to computerized databases, and that opened the possibility that you could use computers to really, outside the government, analyze what government was doing. That wouldn't really be possible if you just had to deal with stacks and stacks and stacks of paper, which would just be, you know, just not a feasible job.
Now, when you started TRAC, which agencies were you looking into? Because I thought it was TRAC was just immigration related, because that's the area I focus on, but I realize it's much more. But what were the initial agencies that you would look into when you started?
Well, my dissertation had been on the Internal Revenue Service and audit, so had gotten a lot of data through that, and actually met up with and worked with David Burnham. We're the co-founders of TRAC and co-directors, when he was doing a book on the IRS, and I helped him out, and we decided, why don't we team up and do this more broadly So not just restricted to the IRS, but other federal agencies. But we obviously started with IRS because we had a lot of background information and knowledge there. We looked at the regulation of nuclear power plants and various federal efforts to combat crime.
Oh, interesting. And when did immigration come into the mix?
Oh my goodness. I don't know, a decade and a half ago.
Oh wow, okay, it's fairly recent. Okay, but you really packed a punch.
Well, about halfway. I mean, we're over 30 years old, so about halfway.
Yeah.
We had done criminal enforcement in the immigration area from the beginning, which would be, you know, prosecution for illegal entry, trafficking, those kinds of things. But in terms of the broader immigration landscape, that was probably, you know, 15 or more years ago.
Okay, and where is TRAC situated? I mean, I think you're on the campus of Syracuse University. How much participation is from the school and funding and you know, cooperation? How does that look for TRAC's operations?
Okay, well, we are part of Syracuse. We're a research data center at Syracuse University. But from the beginning, we have been self-sustaining, self-supporting. The university provides us space on campus, you know, and they keep track of accounting kinds of, you know, measures and stuff like that. But all of our work and research, as well as support of our faculty and staff on these activities, we have to raise the money somehow to pay everything.
And how much staff is it? How big are the operations?
Well, to begin with, David was in Washington, D.C., and I'm located in Syracuse, New York. And so we started with offices here on campus in a small office in Washington, D.C. And depending on our flow of grants, our personnel would vary, and the faculty and student interns, etc., you know, vary from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're a small organization, and for example, now we have, I'd have to, you know, we have 2 full-time professional staff members. And we have, you know, 3 full-time faculty, and then an attorney who helps Harry, that helps on our FOIA project. Mm-hmm. We do litigation, and so we have teams of pro bono attorneys that have volunteered their time. And so we also have, you know, volunteer support and things like that to keep everything going.
That's wonderful. And just one note for listeners, I'll repeat this again later, but if you would like to donate to TRAC, if you go to their website, trac.syr.edu, trac.syr.edu, there's a donate online button to help support these endeavors. And the information that comes out of TRAC is really so helpful. It's eye-opening, really, of what's going on in different federal agencies, which is so important in a, you know, democratic republic to have a have an eye open to what's really going on behind the scenes.
Thank you. Yes, we would really appreciate any donation, because that really, there's so much more that we would like to do, but we are constrained by resources as to what we can actually carry out. And what you would think with this FOIA process, I mean, there's a law and it says you just submit a request and then you wait, and then the agency furnishes you with what you have requested, and they're only allowed to withhold, you know, narrow categories of things. Obviously, national defense secrets, personal files, ongoing investigative matters that would interfere with law enforcement, but factual matters, by and large, I mean, that's public information. But unfortunately, FOIA in practice involves a great deal more than that, and it's very, very labor intensive, and often involves filing lawsuits. We've got a number of ongoing lawsuits now trying to obtain data from federal agencies.
Have you noticed any ebb and flow in how they treat FOIA requests in different administrations or over the decades that you've been doing this, or has it always just been a fight?
It's always been a fight. Well, it's human nature. Nobody wants somebody looking over their shoulder, do they? And so agencies find all sorts of excuses. Now, agencies also vary. There are, I had to sue the Internal Revenue Service over a dozen times, but have gotten standing court orders on the release of data, and they've actually, come about to be now quite cooperative. There are other agencies, some of which in the immigration area, that are less than cooperative. We have 3 ongoing suits against the Immigration and Customs Enforcement right now. Had a number against the Justice Department. We sued the CIA and recently won a case there.
Yeah, and interesting. Trump just yesterday before designated CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, excuse me, an arm of the Department of Homeland Security as the National Security Institute. So they're going to be shielding a lot of their information from FOIA requests because.
Well, yeah, we used to be able it's a really interesting change that has been occurring. If you go back in the history of this country, for eons of time, from very early, obviously, the public was concerned about where their taxes were going. And so the people that were on the federal payroll, their names were published, what their salaries were, where they were posted, their positions were all public. And then in more recent times, particularly after 9/11, things started getting withheld.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we litigated that and we lost, and it was upheld that the government could withhold even information as to where people were being posted in a general sense, because it really makes a difference what happens in your community on the part of the federal government as to what kind of personnel they are here to provide services or enforce the law. If there aren't people here, then, things don't get done. Yeah. So it is a worrisome trend.
That's very interesting. Now, what have been some outside of immigration, any interesting statistical analysis you've had over the decades that surprised you or stuck with you?
Oh my goodness, too many. Too many. It is often the case that what you might expect is occurring when you look under the lid. It's not quite the same way. So sometimes things are working surprisingly well, but other times there's a lot of disparities. So, for example, early on, we were looking at who gets audited by the IRS. And it's not necessarily rational at all. And so you will see lower income people being audited at much higher rates than higher income people. Smaller corporations and businesses being audited at higher rates than the giants. and stark differences depending on where you happen to live in the country, in part based upon, where IRS agents were being posted.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's horrible. Fortunately, it's kind of what's expected in the whole system and how messy it is. What about in the immigration realm? Were there any things that shocked you? I mean, it shocks me all the time. Every time I see a report coming from you guys, I'm like, oh no, I didn't think it was like that or that bad. But were there any that
Well,
shocked you?
yeah, we started out, and one of the early things we looked at was asylum
Hmm.
long ago, and we found great disparities in the decisions of judges. And it's tricky because you can't just compare any judge. The nature of the cases coming before a judge in different parts of the country, the composition of those cases naturally differ.
Yeah.
But within the same courthouse, generally, cases are supposed to be randomly assigned. And that means statistically, if you get a sufficiently sized number of cases to analyze, then differences among judges can't be accounted for on the basis of the makeup of the cases. That, the set of cases were more or less worthy than the other judges' cases. But despite that, you could see asylum decisions that varied from granting, 90% down to less than 10%, just depending upon the predilection of the judge assigned. And that's not just true for immigration. We've done that looking at our federal district court judges that are doing sentencing and finding, similar differences. We also looked at disparities in Social Security. They have a court for hearing appeals on disability claims, and again, large disparities depending on what judge is assigned.
That's amazing. Legal field is so inconsistent. I teach Pepperdine Law School immigration course, and I tell them at the end of the day, whatever you do with the government or with legal stuff, once it's out of your hands and you submit something, it's up to a jury, a judge, a whole host of factors take over that has nothing to do with justice necessarily. There's opinions and stuff like that. So there's a limitation of what we can do, but we could always try our best at our angle. But it's kind of sad sometimes seeing such variances when statistically it shouldn't be that much of a anomaly.
Yeah, but I think if in fact we looked at any part of human life, we would see that.
Exactly.
And to criticize higher education, I'm sure from the student perspective, they see great variation from one professor to another and how grades are assigned, right?
I mean, I
So
can tell you when I first started teaching, I'm embarrassed of how badly I probably taught. The students were probably confused the whole time. What's what I'm talking about?
yeah, and we humans differ,
Yeah.
right? And we have strengths and weaknesses and opinions, and even when we try to be as fair as possible, there are sort of hidden influences that will have an impact no matter how hard we work.
Definitely. So what are the plans for TRAC in the 2020s coming up? Do you have any goals or big changes that are happening or direction you're going towards?
Well, we are trying to expand our immigration work. There's just so many areas. I don't have to tell you, about. We've got we have submitted, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pending FOIAs out there trying to get data. We're sending off new ones every day. And we're trying to raise money then to allow us to analyze the data that's coming in. Clearly, there's lots of concerns about the Remain in Mexico program and how it's doing. There are obviously concerns about detention and how that, how the ability to have a hearing on bond or release is an area. We're trying to get more comprehensive data on the separation of children from their parents as a result of enforcement in the interior of the country, which is not at all well covered in the, as some examples in immigration. We also have a FOIA project. It's a separate site, but you can see a link off of our main page, where we track how well agencies are doing in complying with the Freedom of Information Act. And so we're trying to monitor agencies' compliance with that particular law. Mm-hmm. We're also interested in the whole concern about enforcement of the laws against corporations and how well that is working or not working.
Mm-hmm. Now, is TRAC considered a 503c or those nonprofits where if someone donated, it will be a tax write-off?
Well, yes. I mean, if you donate, it's coming to Syracuse University.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So we're a 501c3. So yes, that is definitely a deductible kind of contribution.
Yeah, as soon as we get on, I'm going to be doing my donation for sure.
Appreciate that.
So stay on the line. I have a couple of questions I want to ask you offline, but I want to thank you, Susan, for coming on. Is there anything else you want to add or any information that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think that covers it. I hope people will visit our website and take advantage of our reports. We've got 2 online tools where you can drill in and look up things that you might be interested in. Because our whole purpose here is to try to make information more accessible to the public.
Mm-hmm. And your website, trac.syr.edu, tracsyr.edu, has links to your Facebook page, the Twitter page, and also the donate online. And there's what's new at TRAC, and it has all these links to like new things you brought out, like the asylum decisions varying across the country and judges, and just a lot of information. And it helps cases. When sometimes you got to make an argument, maybe in federal court, you use this stuff. It's official records to show this, and it could help your case. So it's really a tool that lawyers in general, particularly immigration lawyers, could use really helpfully to their cause. But Susan, thank you so much for coming. I'll put the links and everything together. And please stay on the line. But I appreciate coming on the show.
Thank you very much.